from the last two class, we got an idea about what all particles are present inside an atom, like electron, protons and neutrons. Today, you are going to see how these particles are arranged inside an atom. So there we have different models such as Thomson's model, Rutherford's model and Bohr model. Of this, Thomson's model and Rutherford's model that you studied in 9th standard. Here in plus 1 also it is there in your textbook, but this year it is deleted. But before going to the details about this Bohr model and its limitations, I just give a brief idea about this Thomson's model and Rutherford's atomic model. So first of all, I am saying about the Thomson's atomic model. So in Thomson's atom model, he proposed that atom has a sphere of radius 10 raised to minus 10 meter, in which the positive charge is uniformly distributed and the electrons are embedded in it. So that is the Thomson's model. And this model is also called as plum pudding model, raisin pudding model or watermelon model. Then next we are going to see the Rutherford's atomic model. In Rutherford's atomic model, you know about that alpha ray scattering experiment. Okay, so in that alpha ray scattering experiment, Rutherford bombarded the alpha particles from a radioactive source to hit on a thin gold foil, and he noticed certain observations. So you all know that observations. So what are they? Most of the alpha particles pass through the gold foil without any deflection. And some of the alpha particles show some deflection, and a very few alpha particles, that means 1 in 20,000, were deflected by 180 degree. And from these observations, he concluded the atomic model. And what are the main features of this Rutherford's atomic model? The first one is that the atom consists of a very small center, and the entire mass and the positive charge is concentrated at this center, and he called this center as nucleus. So that is the first point. Then the second one, electrons are revolving around this nucleus in well-defined circular path called orbits or shells. That is the second point. Then the third point, these electrons and the nucleus are held together by electrostatic forces of attraction. So these are the main points of this Rutherford's atomic model. And what is the drawback of this Rutherford's atomic model? You know that it could not explain the stability of atom. So that means a charged particle moving in a circular orbit has a tendency to emit certain radiations, and there is a chance of this electron to fall into the nucleus. So that is, he could not explain the stability of atom. So in order to rectify that, the next model, that is the Bohr model. So we are going to see the postulates of this Bohr model, and again what are the merits and demerits of this Bohr model. So let us see what are the postulates of this Bohr model. The first postulate, the electron in an atom revolve around the nucleus only in certain selected circular paths which have a fixed value of radius and energy. These paths are called orbits or energy shells or energy levels. So like that of the Rutherford's atom model, we can say that the electrons are revolving around the nucleus in certain circular path, and we call that circular path as orbits or energy shells or energy levels. So this is the first point. Then the second one, the energy of the electron in the orbit does not change with the time. So what does it mean? Again the statement, the energy of an electron in the orbit does not change with time. So that means if an electron is in a particular orbit, it does not emit or absorb energy. So as long as the electron in a particular orbit, it never lose or gain energy. So that is the meaning of this. The energy of an electron in the orbit does not change with time. So as long as this electron is in that particular orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. Then the third one, only those orbits are permitted in which the angular momentum of the electron is a whole number multiple of h by 2 pi. So that means like any other moving body, the electron also, if it is moving in a circular path, and you know that the electron is having mass m, and suppose if the velocity is v and the radius of the orbit is r, so the angular momentum is mvr, mass into velocity into radius, and this mvr, angular momentum, is a whole number multiple of h by 2 pi. Or we can say that angular momentum of electron is equal to, is a whole number multiple. So we can say that mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. So we can substitute the value of n as 1, 2, 3, etc. for different energy levels or orbits. Suppose if I substitute n as 1, what we get? mvr or angular momentum is equal to what? h by 2 pi. If I substitute n as 2 for the second energy level, so what is the value of angular momentum? It is equal to h by pi. So that means the angular momentum is equal to h by 2 pi. Okay, then the next is h by pi, then 3h by 2 pi, and so on. So that is about the third point. Then the fourth point, the energy is emitted or absorbed only when the electrons jump from one energy level to another. So in the second postulate, you see that when this electron is in the particular orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. But when this electron goes to a higher energy orbit from the ground level or the lowest energy level, it requires or absorbs some energy. Same, when the electron from the higher energy orbit comes to the lower energy orbit, it emits certain radiations or it emits energy. So that is, the energy is emitted or absorbed only when the electron jumps from one energy level to another. So when it goes from lower energy to higher energy, it absorbs energy. Then when it comes from higher energy to lower energy, it loses its energy. It emits energy. Okay. And that the delta E, what is the delta E is given? Delta E is the difference in energies of the two levels. And what is E1 and E2? E1 and E2 represents the energies of two orbits or energy levels. So that is the fourth postulate. So again we are considering the postulates. The first postulate is electrons are revolving around the nucleus in certain selected path called orbits or shells. Then the second one, the energy of the electron does not change with time. That means if the electron is in particular orbit, does not lose or gain energy. And the third one, the angular momentum of the electron is the whole number multiple of h by 2 pi. So angular momentum is mvr, and that is mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. So n can have values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Then the next one, the energy is emitted or absorbed when the electron jumps from higher energy level to lower energy level or from lower energy level to higher energy. So one energy level to another. So when from lower energy to higher energy, absorbs energy, from higher energy to lower energy, emits energy. And how can you find out the difference in energy? That is equal to E2 minus E1. E2 and E1 are the energies of two energy levels, and delta E represents the difference in energies. Then we move on to the merits or success of this Bohr model. So the first one, explain the stability of an atom. In Rutherford's model, he could not explain the stability of atom. So what is a drawback? That electron is moving in a circular path and the electron is having charge. If a charged particle moving in an orbit, it has a tendency to emit certain radiations and fall to the nucleus. But Bohr stated that if that electron is in particular orbit, does not lose or gain energy. So he explained the stability of the atom. So that is a merit of the Bohr's atomic model. Then the second one, explains successfully the atomic spectrum of hydrogen atom. Successfully explain the atomic spectrum of hydrogen atom. So what do you mean by the spectrum of hydrogen atom? Consider this hydrogen atom contains only one electron. And this one electron mainly like to occupy in the first level, that means the ground level. But when it absorbs energy, it goes to the higher energy level. But when it stays in the higher energy orbit, it knows that it is quite unstable. So what does it do? It again comes to the stable level, that is the ground level, by emitting certain radiations. And if it's emit radiations corresponding to the visible region, we get certain lines, or we get the certain lines, and that is called the atomic spectrum. So he successfully explained the atomic spectrum of hydrogen atom, because as per the Bohr's atomic model there are circular paths. So even if that one electron is present, it occupies in the lower energy, but it has a chance to go to a higher energy orbit when it absorbs energy. But when it comes to the lower energy orbit, it emits certain radiations, thereby we get this atomic spectrum. Then the third one, calculation of energy of the electron in a particular orbit of hydrogen atom. So we can find out the energy as well as radius of the orbit by using one equation, and that is En is equal to minus RH into 1 by n square. En means energy of the orbit, nth orbit. Then RH is the Rydberg's constant. N can have values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. based on the energy levels. So En is equal to minus RH into 1 by n square. N can have values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And what is the RH? It is a Rydberg constant, and that is equal to 2 pi square m e raised to 4 by h square. Then also we can find out the radius of the circular orbit by using the equation Rn is equal to n square h square by 4 pi square m e square z. You know all these terms. N represents the number of the shell or orbit. Can have values 1, 2, 3, 4 based on the shell or orbit. What is h? It is Planck's constant and is having value 6.625 into 10 raised to minus 34 joule second. Then pi value you know. Then m represents the mass of the electron and e represents the charge. And what is that z? Z represents the atomic number. Okay, so atomic number of hydrogen is what? 1. So in hydrogen atom Z is equal to 1, and we substitute all these values like H, M and E. We get the value as Rn is equal to A naught. After substituting all these values, we get a particular value, fixed value, and that is represented by A naught. A naught into n square. Value is 52.9 picometer. A naught is equal to 52.9 picometer. Okay, so that is about the energy and the radius of the orbit. So these are the successes of the Bohr's model. Then we come to the limitations of Bohr model. First one, could not account for the finer details of hydrogen spectrum. So the success of Bohr model is that he explained the atomic spectrum of hydrogen atom, but the limitation is what? He could not account for the finer details of hydrogen spectrum. He noticed that some more lines in the atomic spectrum. So if only the shells are there, only we get some lines. But he finds out certain other lines in addition to this circular paths. So that is the drawback of this Bohr's model. Finer details, a number of lines he can see in the hydrogen spectrum that he cannot explain. Then the second one, he could not explain the line spectrum of multi-electron atoms. What do you mean by multi-electron atoms? More than one electron. He could not explain the line spectra of multi-electron. So he can explain, he could not explain only the hydrogen atom, spectrum of hydrogen atom. He could not explain the spectrum of more than one electrons. So that is another drawback of this Bohr model. Then the third one, failed to account for the effect of magnetic field on the spectra of atoms or ions. So that means when the atoms emitting, radiations emitted from these atoms is placed in a magnetic field, we can see a number of lines. And it's split up into a number of lines. And that phenomenon is called what? Zeeman effect. So he could not explain. So what is responsible for this Zeeman effect? That is another drawback of Bohr model. Again, the radiations are placed in the electric field. Again, it splits up into, the line splits up into number of lines. And that is called the Stark effect. So he could not explain the effect of electric field on the spectra of atoms. So in the magnetic field, it is called Zeeman effect. In the presence of electric field, it is called Stark effect. Then the next, it does not provide any clue to explain the shapes of molecules. So from the Bohr model, we cannot explain how a molecule is formed and what is a theory in order to combine these atoms to form molecules. So all these things could not explain by Bohr. So these are the certain limitations of this Bohr atomic model. Okay, so our models are over. So we see the Thomson's model, then Rutherford's atomic model, and mainly the Bohr model and its limitations. So this is very important. The postulates of Bohr's atomic model and also the merits and demerits of this Bohr's atomic model is very important. So please study all these things. Then we move to the term orbits or shells. And how can we find out the maximum number of electrons in each orbit? All these things. The first one, orbits or shells. This orbits or shell is represented by small letter n. And what is meant by this orbits or shells? It is a well-defined circular path around the nucleus in which an electron revolves. So Rutherford and also Bohr explained this. Electrons are revolving around the nucleus in certain circular path called orbits or shells. And that is the orbit or shell definition for this. And what is the maximum number of electrons present in each orbit? We can find out by using the formula 2n square, when n represents the number of the shell or orbit. So the maximum number of electrons we can find out by using the formula 2n square, where n represents the number of the shell or orbit. So here you can see a table. So n means the number of the shell. It is 1, 2, 3 and can have values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Then the first shell, it is named as K shell. Second shell, it is named as L shell. And the third one, it is named as M shell. And the fourth one, N, and so on. So these are the names of the shells. So n can have values 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And what is the name of that shell? K shell, L shell, M shell and N shell. Then how can we find out the maximum number of electrons in each shell? By using the formula 2n square. So where in the first shell, according to that formula, n is equal to 1. So n square means 1. 1 into 2, 2. So the maximum number of electrons in the first orbit is 2. Then second shell, that means L shell, n value is 2. So 2 into 2 square. So 2 square is 4. So 4 into 2, 8. So maximum number of electron is 8. Then the third shell, 3. So 3 square, 9. 9 into 2, 18. Then fourth shell, 4 square, 16. 16 into 2, 32. So we can find out the maximum number of electron by using that formula 2n square, where n represents the number of the shell. Okay, so orbit or shell represents the circular path around the nucleus, and the number of electrons can find out by using 2n square. Okay, then we come to the energy of the orbit is related to its size. So what does it mean? The energy of the orbit is related to its size. So if we consider the first energy orbit, the first shell, it is closer to the nucleus. So what about its size? It is considered as a lower energy orbit. The size is small, it's closer to the nucleus. So that is that point. The energy of the orbit is related to its size. Then it means the lowest energy is found in the smallest orbit. That means the orbit which is closer to the nucleus is having the smallest energy. Okay, then we come to subshells. So shells are circular path, subshells. So from the name itself, you can say subdivision of shells. So each shell is divided into number of shells, subshells, and that is the subdivision of shells is known as subshells. And each shell consists of one or more subshells represented as S, P, D, F. Shell we represent as K, L, M, N. Subshells, it is represented as S, P, D, F. Okay. Then the number of subshells in a shell is equal to the shell number. That means the first shell, that is the K shell, consists of only one subshell. And what we call that subshell? It is the S subshell. Then the second shell, it is the L shell. It consists of 2 subshells. So the number of subshells is equal to the shell number. So the second shell consists of 2 subshells. And what are they? S and P. Then the third shell, that is the M shell, consists of 3 subshells and they are S, P and D. Similarly, fourth shell consists of how many? 4 subshells and they are S, P, D and F. Okay. Then next we are going to see the maximum number of electrons in each subshell. The first shell, that is the K shell, second shell L shell, third shell M shell and the fourth shell, that is N. Okay. So the first shell, what is the maximum number of electrons? 2. L shell, it is 8. M shell, it is 18. And N shell, it is 32. By using the formula 2n square. Okay. Then in the subshell you studied one point. What is that? The number of subshell is equal to the shell number. So the first shell, K shell, consists of only one subshell. And what is the name of that subshell? It is S. So K shell, the maximum number of electrons is 2. It consists of only one subshell and S subshell. So the maximum number of electron in S subshell is what? 2. Okay. Then we move to the second shell. What is that? L shell. L shell, the maximum number of electron is 8. How many subshells are there? There are 2 subshells. And what is the name of that 2 subshells? S and P. So from the first shell, you got an idea about the maximum number of electrons in S subshell. What is that? 2. So here we can simply write the 2 electrons. Then remaining, how many electrons are there? 6. So what is the maximum capacity of the P subshell? It is 6. Then we move to the third shell, and what is that? M shell. Maximum number of electron is 18. And how many subshells are there? There are 3 subshells. And what are the names of these 3 subshells? They are S, P and D. Now you know the maximum number of electrons in S and P subshell. What are they? In S subshell 2, P subshell 6. So we just write that. In S 2 and P subshell it is 6. Then what is the maximum capacity of that M subshell? It is 18. So from that 6 plus 2, 8 electrons accommodate in S and P subshell. Remaining how many? Yes, 10 electrons. So that means the maximum capacity of that D subshell is 10. Then to the fourth shell, that is the N shell, the maximum number of electron is 32. And how many subshells? Since it is a fourth shell, how many subshells? Yes, 4 subshells. And what are they? S subshell, P subshell, D subshell and F subshell. Then what is the maximum number of electrons in SP and D? Yes, it is 2 for S and 6 for P and 10 for D. That we got from this first, second and third subshell. Then what is the maximum number of electrons in N shell or the fourth shell? That is 32. So from that 10 plus 6, 16 plus 2, 18. Then remaining, yes, 14 electrons. So what is the capacity of this F subshell? That is the 14. Okay. So the shell capacity is 2n square and the number of subshells is equal to the shell number. Then we can find out the maximum number of electrons in each subshell. S 2, P 6, D 10 and F subshell 14. Okay, that's all for today. Then let's revise our topics. So the first thing, the Bohr model and its limitations, the postulates. merits and demerits of Bohr's atomic model. Then we consider the concept of shells, the maximum capacity of that shells, then again the subshells, and how can we find out the maximum number of electrons in each subshell. In the next class, we are going to see the concept of orbitals, quantum numbers, etc. Okay, thank you dear students.